Before you focus on making money, focus on the process of becoming consistent inside of a system, of knowing what you think the stock is going to do. In the year 2010, I retired at the age of 34 from the stock market. I had made a little over $16 million in my career. To make another 20 million bucks, am I willing to give myself to this game for, let's say, another 5 years? I mean, how much money does a man really need? And I think the conversation started from there with my wife.
Hello, and welcome to the Trader's Journey for Investors Underground. In this episode, it's an honor to be joined by Tapereader, a trading veteran whose career spans nearly 3 decades, countless market cycles, and has endured plenty of ups and downs and wisdom that he's learned along the way that he's willing to share with us today. From turning $4,000 into $250,000 from his Air Force barracks, to losing a significant percentage of that and having to rebuild, he eventually amassed an 8-figure trading fortune before he retired for 10 years in 2010. He's back to trading, and we're going to get a chance to talk about what that evolution of his trading style and the market is like. He's a husband, father, mentor to his family and community, and really a bright spot in the trading community that just goes to show success is more than just having big P&L. It's about meaning. It's an honor to introduce Tape. Hello, Tape. Thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Tape, I know we spoke and I came across your trading journey somewhat randomly, and I was pretty floored when I heard you discussing your background, what you've been through in trading, and even, getting to hear from your wife. Shout out to her for, filling in the blanks and giving some background and perspective about what it's like for, you to trade and for her to interact with you sort of, as a trader, as a team in trading. So I absolutely loved hearing about your trading journey, and it's a real honor for me to get to talk to you, and glad you agreed to come on the show and share your journey with the audience.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate that. You couldn't say it better. My wife and I are absolutely an excellent team, and we've been that way for a very long time. And she's my greatest supporter and my greatest cheerleader.
Tape, I definitely want to talk a bit about the relationship of you and your wife and being a team, having a support system. And I think this does tie into the start of your trading journey. So if we could go back, how did you first learn or hear about the stock market and trading?
Well, that's a great question. And we have to go back 29 years to answer that question. So, out of high school, I wanted to go to college, but I didn't have money to go to college. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to join the United States Air Force to get the GI Bill so I can, serve my country and have the money to go to college afterwards. And, like a lot of things in life, they happen when you least expect it. And a year into my enlistment, I got to my actual duty station at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And I was working with a guy who was maybe 2 years older than me. His name was Nate. And one day while we were working, he just, I don't know, came out of nowhere and said, "Yeah, I made $1,400 last week trading stocks." And I thought that was interesting. I didn't know what stocks were, but I thought it was interesting that he made $1,400 doing that, considering that we were only getting paid, $864 every 2 weeks as an E3. So that's kind of how what piqued my interest about it. After that, I kind of went back to my barracks and just started thinking like, um, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if it's something like I could be successful at. And there wasn't really a lot of information about the electronic day trading or day trading in general back then. The internet was just getting started. The internet that I had in my barracks was a 56.6 kilobyte dial-up modem, which is just funny. I think about like me day trading on a modem, but yeah, I did. And my computer was like a 486 DX IBM that I paid, way too much money for back then, like 3,500 bucks. But what I actually ended up doing was I had $4,200 to my name, and like any irrational young man full of hubris, I decided to take all the money I had and open up an online brokerage account. And at that time, the only one that existed was one called Daytech. And so I put it into I opened up a Daytech account, and I started firing away at lunchtime from my barracks. I had an hour, to go eat basically at the chow hall, and I didn't eat. I'd go back to my barracks, and then I'd dial in and get on my account on Daytech, and then I would trade and try to make some money. So that's how I got started.
What do you remember about some of your first trades? Do you remember kind of what your strategy was or what you were interested in buying? You know, what do you remember about that time?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it now, it was so foolish, and honestly, I readily admit that I got completely lucky because I was trading the beginning to middle part of the internet bubble. And so my strategy was, now you have to understand, I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't have a mentor. There was no, go on Twitter and get advice or Reddit or anything like that. So my strategy was I would come back to the barracks. I would pull up the Yahoo Finance page. I would look at the top gainers of the day. There's always like that list of 10. And inevitably, every day during the internet bubble, there would be one that was up 400, 500, 600%. And I would literally take my whole entire account and just buy the one that was up the most. And then I would go get a little bit of food from the chow hall. I'd come back 30 minutes later, and, instead of it being up 600%, it was up 1,000%. And so, yeah, it's thinking back at it now, it's like, wow, what an idiot. I could have been destroyed any day, but that's not what happened. So it's a different story, which is, why I'm sitting here talking to you about it.
What eventually did happen? You know, how long did you have that success with that strategy?
Yeah, so the internet bubble went on until late 99, early 2000. And by that time, I had gotten out of the military. So I was pretty fortunate. I was able to when I first started trading, I, had the $4,200, but 4 to 5 months in, I turned that into about a quarter million, a little bit more than a quarter million. And by the time I got out of the military, I had a little over $1 million, you know, tr- trading, if you wanted to call that gambling. Let's call it gambling. And then after that, um, I took a job with a .com company for 9 months, and so I was able to work a really good high tech paying job and also trade stocks at the same time. So I'd wake up at 6:30 in the morning and I trade stocks until like 3:30, and then I'd have to be at work at 4 because I worked in mid shift, and I would work from 4 till about 1 or 2 in the morning. Go home and sleep for 3 hours and rinse and repeat and get up and do it. um, 9 months went by. I worked at that job, Hyperion, and I was able to get my account to a little over $2 million by that time. The reason that I ended up quitting that job is they had asked me to go to the day shift, and I was the low man on the totem pole. So I was trading. I was making really good money. I was making 10, 20,000 on average per day, and some days I had days where I made 40 or 50, and so I was unwilling to like really give that up to go to a day shift. And so that's when I really decided, with my wife at the time. She was my fiance, but with my wife, we decided that we would go ahead and attempt to start this as a business, like to actually look at it like a business. And so that's what we did, and that was middle of 2000-ish, I would say.
There's a little bit that I would love to unpack there. I mean, the
There's a lot
first thing,
there. There's a
yeah,
lot there.
yeah, and that's what I love about your journey is that there's so much going on, and you've lived this incredible life. Do you remember what it was like talking to your, you know, maybe was she your fiance or your girlfriend then, and telling her or telling your family or your friends, that you're trading and you're doing okay? What was that like?
I've always been kind of like a closeted person when it comes to like my finances. I didn't mind sharing that with my fiance. As a matter of fact, I have a really fun story how she found out when we first became millionaires. So I was 19, and so we were engaged. So she's 18, I'm 19, and I went to go visit her at school, and I took her out to Olive Garden. And typically, because I was a penny pincher back then, I'd be like, we would go out and we would share like a dinner, or or I would say, hey, you can go ahead and get your own dinner, but don't get a soda because it's an extra $3 or $2, whatever it was back then. So anyway, the reason she knew something was up was because we went to Olive Garden, and I sat down and I said, baby, you can get whatever you want tonight and you can get dessert. And she was like, what are we celebrating? And I was like, well, I crossed $1 million, and we're officially millionaires. So that it's always an interesting story to tell, you know. But yeah, she knew all along the financial part of the journey. I shared everything with her from the very beginning, but I didn't share stuff like that with my family. I kind of sort of mentioned a little bit about my background growing up. We were not in the best monetary situation, and so a lot of times, with the people that are in my family, like if they found out I had millions and millions of dollars, they'd call up and be like, "Hey, I need a new car, or I need you to pay my house payment," or you know how it goes.
What was that decision like, you know, returning to civilian life and deciding, between maybe trading or getting a job? Can you talk a little bit about that moment and what made you decide, ultimately to pursue, a career in the dot com uh,
Yeah,
area?
so that's another interesting little side story. When I got out of the military, I had the GI Bill, so I had all intentions of going to college. And so my wife, my fiance at the time, was at Penn State main campus, and I enrolled and was getting ready to go. I was actually 2 weeks away from, she would have been, let's see, she would have been a senior, and I would have been a freshman in college. And we had this whole plan, she was going to graduate, she was going to go make money while I studied and did my thing. But 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, I got a phone call from a guy I worked with in the military who was working at this job, Hyperion, and he offered me a very well-paying job. And so I was able to negotiate a mid shift, and that allowed me to do both things, Anthony. It allowed me to trade, which was something that I was really, really enjoying, and I thought I was pretty good at. And it also allowed me to get a job where I was making a lot of money. They offered me $85 an hour, and 1999, that's a lot of money. So I thought, okay, well, I have the the really cool kind of outlet of trading that I can do, which is kind of like I was treating it like a side hustle, let's say, a very well-paying side hustle, but nonetheless, that's the way I was looking at it. But I also had the foundation of having a career in my mind. And so, I kind of like when I would talk to Rory about it, I'd be like, hey, I can do this job for 20 years. We could save up a couple $1 million easily in 25 years. I could retire and I could do this side hustle, and who knows where it's going to go. Um, but like I was saying, 9 months in, my boss kind of forced my hand because they had told me I needed to go to a day shift. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that decision because it would have interfered with trading, and I was having a lot of success in trading. So the .com job went to the wayside, and then all of a sudden we're like, hey, let's go ahead and give this a shot and see where we can go.
Yeah, incredible. So,
Yeah.
so you go full time trading. Could you walk us through the next year or so? What what level of success did you have? How did it go when you went full time trading?
Yeah, so I went at full-time trading, I had a little over $2 million. And so here I am. I'm now, okay, I'm gonna give it my all. I'm really gonna really try to make this a business. And it just so happened we were on the tail end of the internet bubble. And it was, unbeknownst to me, getting ready to pop. So within 6 months of me quitting my job at Hyperion, the company actually, the internet bubble popped. A lot of the .com companies went bankrupt. The company I worked for actually went bankrupt. It doesn't even exist anymore. And then I proceeded over the next 6 months after that to lose 75% of my account trying to do the same. Exactly. I can laugh about it now, but just trying to do the same thing that I had been doing because it worked, right? And it's like everyone's a genius in a bull market. That was a bull market on steroids. It was the craziest market I think I've ever experienced in the 29 years that I've been involved in the stock market. It was millionaires being made, overnight and over the weekend. So yeah, it was crazy.
So 75% of your capital is gone.
Yeah.
Do you and your wife ever consider not trading, returning to work? Can you walk us through that uncomfortable portion? What was that like for you? How did you come out at the other end of that?
So I had a conversation with Rory and I said, "Hey, trading's not going well." She knew trading had not been going well because I would call her up and be like, "Hey, I lost 50K today or I lost 100K today." And there seemed to be a lot of those conversations versus like, "Hey, I made 50K." So she knew I was going the opposite direction. And basically for me, when my account fell to about a $500,000, I really had like this kind of gut shot moment where I'm like, I'm literally just pissing away this money, gambling. It's the first time I actually looked at it that way. It's like I'm just losing this money gambling. And I was young. So I'm 21 and I'm just thinking like, had I not lost that money, I'm starting very young with a very prominent financial future ahead of me. So I went to Rory and I said, "Hey, we got a 500,000 left." I say we because we've always been a team. I've always looked at my wife as a teammate, and so I said we have two options. The first option is I can quit trading. We have this $500,000. We're getting ready to get married. I can go get a job in the same field I was already working in. I actually got offered a job in Denver by another company called XO Communications, which I think they got bought by Frontier or something like that, but making the same good money. And I said, "Hey, we can have this $500,000 nest egg." I had a house that I had paid cash for, so I had that as well. Some cars that I had paid cash for. So we had some assets. And I thought, we can get started in our marriage financially with a little better future than most people. Most people start in the negative. We're not. We're starting in the positive. So we have that option. The other option is I can really see now I did not have any idea on what I was doing. And I can actually take my time and I can actually try to teach myself how to trade. And if I do that, there's the possibility of losing the rest of this money. And that is when Rory looked at me and she said, "Tim, I believe in you. When you apply yourself, you do things with excellence, and I want you to continue to try to teach yourself how to trade." And so that was the encouragement that I needed because I was kind of on the fence emotionally and psychologically. I had beaten myself to a pulp, as a trader, losing that amount of money does crazy stuff to your head. And so that was the encouragement that I needed to go, okay, let's go ahead and really give this a shot and look at it from a technical perspective of, I think I can actually teach myself how to trade. And so then after that, um, I basically didn't do any trades. I sat in front of my trading rig, my trading computer, and I just watched stocks for 6 months. And I watched basically the same 5 to 10 stocks every single day. No trades whatsoever. Like, I don't even think I had a mouse attached to my computer, to be honest. It was just like, I would start my computer up and I'd watch the level two and then I'd take the mouse and like shove it over there. So I wasn't tempted to make trades. Um, but after 6 months, I started noticing these like patterns that were happening. My brain started to recognize some pattern recognition, and I would go kind of like paper trading today, but it was more like in my mind. I go, okay, if I bought it here, I think I could sell it here, or if I shorted it here, I think I could cover here. And I started doing that, and then around the seventh month, I finally built up enough courage to make a trade and it was successful. Then I made another trade and it was successful. And I started building momentum back as a trader. but this time I would say with some systems in place that eventually became profitable, repeatedly profitable systems.
If you're looking for ways to take your trading to the next level, Investors Underground might have something to offer. You'll have access to courses and mentors to learn from, some of the best technology available for scanning stocks and breaking news, and access to the chat rooms, where you'll find a vibrant community of focused traders who share their trade ideas in real time each day. Members also have access to the morning broadcasts, where the IU moderators share their trade ideas for the day ahead during the pre-market session. Members have access to the midweek study sessions with Stan, the midweek study sessions with Sam, webinars, moderator watch lists, and all the other tools and resources that Investors Underground has to offer. Listeners of the Trader's Journey can access exclusive membership deals available at investorsunderground.com/journey. And now, back to our episode with Tape. What type of strategy or, instrument were you trading? Was it stocks? Was it options? And, was it both long and short? What did that all look like? Intraday swing trades?
Yeah, initially when I first started teaching myself how to trade, I acted more like a liquidity provider, market maker on both sides of the market. And so this was so decimalization was not happening yet. Okay, this is right before that. I need to put that out there. So we were trading teenies, which are fractions, and we had the SOS network, which I don't know if a lot of your viewers know what that is, but SOS was SOES, Small Order Execution Services. It was made just for day traders. You could buy up to 1,000 shares. You put your order in, and the market maker had to fill your order before they filled their order. So literally played a game of like leapfrog right in front of them all the time. So if you'd have a stock that would say at $8 on the bid and the offer was 8 1/8, which today is 8.125, you would bid a little bit. You would go out on an ECN. At that time, we had Island, Arca, Instinet, a couple other ones. Oh, maybe we didn't have Arca then, but we had Instinet, a couple other ones. You would basically go out right in front of them at 8, maybe 8 1/32, and you'd pick up the buy liquidity, and then you'd chuck it back on the sell side, and you'd make the spread. It's not an ideal game. You obviously can't play it anymore today, but it is what I did. And back then, the market was fractured. There's always inefficiencies in the market that you can exploit, and I exploited that for years. And I made a good living doing it while before decimalization came in. When decimalization came in, and you were going up by a penny, you just couldn't do it anymore. The ECN fees were too much, and it wasn't profitable. So, during that first, I would say, system that I have, if you want to call that, I started also kind of expanding out a little bit to some other things. I had at one point, I was running 7 different systems in the market. Another one I think I talked to you a little bit about the other day was I had this very simple program that I had paid a programmer to program for me. We had locked markets a lot back before regulation NMS, before you had to give your client the best price, the best offer or the best bid, depending if they're buying or selling. We had locked markets a lot because the ECNs didn't talk to each other. So you'd have like Instinet bidding, let's say $10, $10, a little over $10 on the bid, and then you would have B Trade offering shares at like 9 7/8. So all you had to do is buy on B Trade and sell on Instinet. Um, you know, Not everybody. A lot of traders back then. There wasn't. I have to. You have to kind of understand this. This idea of day traders was just getting started. That number of day traders was like below 3,000 people or worldwide. There was not a lot of us, and so a lot of them didn't even have access to all the different routes. I had Realtic, and I had a broker that I actually made them go get all these different relationships with all these different ECNs just to run this one program. And so all day long, it would just match up. I was matching up liquidity basically. So on 5,000 different stocks, and that thing and just, it was like picking up nickels in front of a bulldozer, but it worked and made a lot of money. And obviously that game went away. So that inefficiency went away. You can't do that one anymore. But my whole point in telling you that is like, as you're doing things, you notice other things and you start exploiting that. You know, at one point I had 7 different systems in my tool belt to trade as a trader. So if like the 2 or 3 systems aren't working in a certain type of market, but these other 4 were, you just went to these other 4. I think very early on, I realized in order to be an excellent trader, I need to make sure that I can trade any type of market. And I had a system in place or a couple that I could do that. And so the market, you know, the character of the market's always changing, and it's our job as traders to change with it, not to try to make it stay the way we want it, but to follow it and say, oh, you want to go do that now? Okay, let's exploit that and make some money doing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is the one constant in the market is change, and strategies will be profitable some months, years, quarters, and then they might not. And so being able to adapt and modify and learn and grow definitely seems like one of the constants for you in your trading journey.
Yeah, I mean, the only realistically looking back, the only thing that I'm continuing to do system wise that I did back then is mock and mill. So market on close and market on open. I historically have been an imbalance trader. I love, you know, that time between 9:25 and 9:30 in the morning because we get all the opening indications. And I love the last 10 minutes of the day because we get mock and market on close. You get all the indications, and you can, if you know what you're doing, you can exploit those, especially when they're large sell side imbalances or they're large buy side imbalances. Like for example, Palantir, you know, yesterday had a huge sell imbalance and it sold off $9 in like 2 minutes. Like as an imbalance trader, it's the jackpot. You know, you can exploit that stuff. So that's really the only thing that I've continued to do over 29 years. And I don't think even though that's automated now with the computers, whereas back in the day, you would have specialists that would manually match up the book. So you would get that final print at like 407 or 408. You don't get it at 4 o'clock in 1 millisecond anymore because the computer's doing it. Um, it's a slightly a different game because there's computer algorithms running on that, doing a lot of the matching now. It's not human intervention, but there's still the ability to make money. So I continue to do that.
How would you describe your strategy today? How much different is it, and has it, evolved over the decades? And related to that, the name tape reader, where does that come from? Were you reading tape or order flow back then? Do you do that now? What does all that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So 25 years ago, I'll start with the tape reading portion. So 25 years ago, tape reading looked a lot different than what it does now. Um, like I was saying, there was a lot of manual intervention back there. You did not have the crazy software that everyone offers now of like dark pool prints, for example. There was no dark pool. You couldn't hide your orders. You could like the algorithms, the hedge fund algorithms that want to buy let's say 3 million shares of Microsoft one day, they break it up and put a lot of noise in there. You know, they'll put 20 shares, 13 shares, 7 shares. You you can't you can't tape read that. You need software to do that, which you know, technologically wise, we have it. And if you know how to use it, you know how to read it, you can certainly continue to exploit the idea of tape reading. But nowadays, it's more price action sort of style tape reading. So it's like using the system that I use. So my main system is the Ripster EMA clouds. Okay. And this is just kind of an example. So let's say I'm looking at the 10-minute EMA clouds and I'm looking at the 512 and I see a curl over the 512. That gives me a very decisive, let's go, let's buy that stock because it's turning bullish. Now, if I look at that and it's making a nice little curl on the bottom, this is where the price action portion comes in. So it's a 10-minute chart. So I look at the previous 2 candles to see what they're doing. And if I see that the sell side volume on those candles is diminishing and the buy side is obviously going up. And I can see that visually on a candlestick. That's more the price action I'm looking for. Now, with the tape reading stuff, visually with my eyeballs, something I've always done is I'm watching the time and sales while I'm reading the tape, the little ticker tape, or well, like it used to be. I can see larger orders coming in that are dominating the smaller sell orders. That's the type of price action I'm looking for because it gives me that additional, okay, not only is my system telling me I'm going bullish, but as well my price action is telling me, my 29 years of reading price action is telling me that I'm going bullish too. So that's where it becomes an advantage for me. But the name tape reader comes from the fact that back in the 90s and early 2000s, before we had all these fancy software catching algorithms and everything like that, if you really wanted to kind of know where a stock was going, you had to read the tape. You had to understand how to read the tape. And it was a very pro move. Like a lot of guys couldn't read the tape. And I think it started early with, like I was saying earlier, like trying to teach myself how to trade, and I'm watching stocks for 6 straight months. I'm watching the same stocks for 6 straight months. I'm watching the time and sales on those stocks every single day, every minute. Your brain starts to notice a few things, and then if you're mathematically inclined, you can go, "Oh, okay, I can take advantage of that, and I can make some money. I can exploit it, and make some money." And that's what I did. That's where the name comes from, and I have to explain that a lot, but I don't mind.
You mentioned, watching the same maybe six tickers. Is that something that you still do now? Is watch, and get a good understanding of certain stocks?
Yeah, so here in my office, it's me and my son Owen. I'm teaching my 17-year-old son Owen how to trade. We're 8 months into that journey. And around here we have some certain rules that we follow, and we trade the same pretty much 10 stocks every single day. And I believe that this is one of the biggest mistakes that traders make is they think they have to know every stock in every market and they have to be perfect at it. And that's a lie. You don't. You just have to be really, really good at a few, and you have to understand how they dance every single day. That's the way I put it. And if you know how they dance, then you can take advantage of that because you have some insight. Whereas another trader that might have never traded that stock is coming in and you're competing against them in some sort of a way inside the market, right? And you have an inherent advantage over them. So the way that I explain it is, so I've been married for almost 24 years. I've been with my girl for almost 31, and we like to dance. And so early on, when we were learning how to dance, we were trying to figure it out. Like, I want to twirl, I want to do a twirl, and she wants to go backwards. Like it's awkward at the beginning, but after year of dancing, you start to anticipate what your wife is going to do. And so the dance is more beautiful. The dance is more structured. The dance is more, elegant. And so after 29, 30 years of doing this with my wife, we love to dance because we know what each other's thinking. It's the same thing with the idea of stocks. Each stock has a character. There's a character involved in that stock. How does it react to an up market? How does it react to a down market? How does it react when interest rates are going up? How does it react when interest rates are going down? Um, there's some subtle qualities to it that you can pick up on. How does it react at the beginning of the month versus the end of the month? There's certain patterns that you can pick up inside that. And when you know that, combined with being inside of a system now that we use that as another piece of information to stack on top of our system to say, yes, we're a go here, or no, we're going to short here. And so we have like level 2 is a depth book. We have a knowledge book, and it's a depth book. So not only are we just like trading our system, we're applying the knowledge that we know from those 10 stocks on top of it, which gives us an inherent advantage, in my opinion, to those 5 to 10 stocks. Now, the 5 to 10 stocks that we trade, there are stocks that, I think any trader probably has traded in their life if they're trading Mag 7, let's say, for example. The other thing is inside our system, we're looking for setups that have at least $1.50 to $2 between the EMA clouds. We call that area that exists between the EMA clouds the air gaps. So say down here you have a 512 cloud, but then up here you have a 3450 cloud. That distance between them, let's say it's $2.50. Okay, that's a bonus for us because we know that our risk to reward ratio on that trade might be, let's say our stop is set at 50 cents. Okay, so like right below the 512, we would cut and we'd take a 50-cent paper cut on it. Well, our risk to reward, if we're right, we get 250 out of it is 5 to 1. So we look for setups like that a lot. That's a big portion of our trading every single day.
That's incredible. And I like this idea of being really cognizant of the risk to reward. One of
Always.
the questions that I have about that is, especially as you're teaching your son, which I think is incredible, you know, do you notice that maybe for a newer trader, the managing the risk to reward, all of the structure, the rules, the discipline over time, are you seeing that he's able to maintain that discipline? He's learning that because you're able to teach him. What is that process like? Do you still see, parts of yourself maybe when you were younger in him as you're teaching him, or are you seeing the benefits of having a mentor from the get-go to keep you patient, to keep your risk to reward in check? What is that all looking like as
Yeah,
you
those
see
are
it?
all those are all great questions, and I will tell you that Owen has a huge advantage over anybody else getting started because he's got his dad next to him, and obviously I love him, and I want him to be fully inclined to be a better trader than me. So that's like the next 2 years of my life I'm going to devote to basically teaching Owen everything that's in my brain. Um, Owen has been a disciplined robot, which I love. He is systematic. I mean, he follows the system to a T. There's very, very little emotion attached to his trading. I think I have more emotion than he does. I'm trying to take when I think about me as a trader, I'm thinking all the really excellent points that I have, the excellent characteristics I have as a trader, and I'm trying to amplify them to make them even better inside him. But then all the things that I know that are my hangups, my little hiccups, I'm telling him those so that they're not his weaknesses. I want him to take them and make them his strengths. So I'm trying to make like the perfect trader, like the perfect, and he's 17, so he just soaks it up. But to your point, a lot of traders don't have the advantage of having a mentor that has been at it for 29 years and has been through all different types of cycles inside the market and has made, lots of money or lost lots of money at one point in time. And so he definitely has an advantage. There's some nepotism there. I would say that most traders, we were actually talking about this the other day. If I had to put a percentage on it, okay, 99 out of 100 traders start the wrong way. And it's very, very unfortunate. And I think that they are, to some degree, we talked about this the other day, some degree, they're very influenced by social media. They think that they have to get rich and they have to get rich so fast. And it's just the antithesis of what a good trader who wants longevity in a career really needs to do. You need to put your time in before you're worried about making money. You need to put your time in and learn the system. You learn a system, a repeatable, profitable system that works, and you practice. Like with Owen, I'll give you the example with Owen. When Owen started, I could have just said, Owen, buy this here, sell that there, short that here, cover this there. They wouldn't have done anything for him other than he's listening to me. But what I had him do is I said, I'm going to teach you the EMA cloud system. And so a lot of it was the, structure of when do you when do you place trades? When do you take some shares off? Uh, how do you get your targets? What is MTF? Things like that. What is confluence? Teaching him those concepts and then having him visually watch while these things are happening. Like, what does a 512 curl look like? What does a Mike talk about a little bit about chart patterns. What does a triple top breakdown look like? What does a cup and handle look like? What does an M formation look like? What does a W formation look like? What does a head and shoulders pattern look like? So he was just literally um, sucking up knowledge from me. He wasn't doing any trading. He was just watching. And then after a while, I was like, okay, hey, you're allowed to do two different types of setups. You're allowed to do a 512 curl, and you're allowed to do a 512 break. So the 512 curl is a bullish setup where you buy it when it breaks above the 512, and basically you're pushing it up to the 3450. You're taking some off there. The other one is a short. It's the opposite. So when the 512 breaks, it goes from being bullish to bearish. Now we're going to short it down to whatever the next support level is. I said, you're allowed to do those two setups, and you're allowed to do those two setups on the 10 stocks that I gave you, and you can only do 5 shares. And I want you to show me when you should take a majority of those shares off, because we're not taking them off all at once. We're going to hit this point, and when that's the support comes in, we might say it's 5, we're going to take 3 off. Then if it breaks down to that support, we're going to look for the next support on a higher time frame, and we're going to go, okay, we're going to take 1 off there. If at any point in time it starts to curl and go back up and possibly look like it's going bullish, we take the trade off completely. I was more interested in him showing me he understood the process than him making money. I actually told him, I said, I don't want you to make any money. I want you to tell me what you think is going to happen to the stock. Because if you can tell me what can happen to the stock, the money comes later. The share count is irrelevant. Whether it's 5, 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000, we can make that money later, but you have to understand how this system works. And so he has done that. He actually is, I would say, on par with me when it comes to reading the EMA clouds. Sometimes he dishes me trades a lot of times, like things that I miss. He'll see one and he'll say, "Hey, Dad, so and so is getting ready to break 512. You might want to get some puts on it." And I'll pull it up and look at it, and sure enough, I'll buy some puts, and he'll make me some money, and then I give him a little high five, and because I know that he's becoming better than me, and I'm okay with that. I want him to be the best trader he can possibly be. But back to my point, like 99 out of 100, or 99 out of 100 traders fail because they think immediately, I need to take my $5,000 that I put into this account, and I need to make the most amount of money I possibly can because I need to get status or whatever. Okay. And so, they got $5,000 and they go, well, it's not a lot. So how do I compound it quickly? And they make the mistake of immediately trading options, right? Which is a leverage derivative product. So it's like, it's just the dumbest thing to me. It's like, it's uncalculated. I get why they do it, but it's not a calculated move on their part if they're looking to be a career trader. If they're looking to gamble, I completely understand that. And I'd have more respect for a trader that comes to me and says, I'm just gambling. That's why I'm doing it. And I've talked to dozens and dozens of, you know, mostly young men about this. And I say, tell me how you got started. Oh, I started trading options and I lost 23,000 of my $30,000 account. It's a story I hear over and over and over again. And like I said, it's highly unfortunate, but a lot of times they don't want to put the effort in and the time necessary to actually give them a solid foundation to build on. So that's what I'm doing with Owen.
And thank you. I think those are all great points. And I think it's amazing that you're teaching him, and more specifically, the way that you're teaching him a system and not just what to do, press these buttons for me. I think it's actually really, really helpful. What advice would you give to newer traders out there? If you could give them just one piece of advice, as they start their trading journey, if you could give one piece of advice to all those traders, what would it be?
I guess, it's what we tell people in the tenant trade group that I'm part of. It's the reassertion on a daily basis of, hey, learn the system before you apply a serious amount of money to it. And by serious, I mean, maybe $5,000 is serious to one guy, where 500,000 is serious to another guy. Um, I do my very best to warn people, not to full port into some option that's expiring in 2 days. um, and give them the best advice I can, which is like learn the system. And when you can prove to yourself that you can read what it's going to do, like Owen can, then you can apply shares to it. And then once you're comfortable doing the equities portion, okay, then you can leverage it up, and instead of doing shares, now you can do puts and calls. We're just entering that paradigm with Owen in the next 2 months. We're going to go from you're allowed to short or buy 100 shares to okay, now you're allowed to take 5 to 10 puts or call contracts. And he's going to see the benefit of, what leverage looks like. It's going to be an eye-opening experience for him. He does see it with me because that's how I do it. But for him, it'll be entertaining to watch, but he'll have that knowledge. He'll have that basis where a lot of guys don't, and they overtrade, they get too emotional, they get out of their trade too quick. They say they hold on to their losers too long and they sell their winners too fast. It's just it's a psychological warfare that they don't have any battlefield experience to recognize that they're doing something wrong, and they repeat it over and over and over again until their account is blown up. It's very, very sad to watch. If I could teach everyone in the world how to trade, I would, but it's just what I've learned over the years is like human beings are human beings. They're going to do what they want to do. You can give them advice all day long till you're blue in the face, but they're going to really do what they want to do. So, if people are listening out there and they're young, I hope they take that advice. I hope, don't take the pressure of trying to make money right away. Give yourself 6 months to a year to learn a repeatable system like I use, the MA clouds. And then once you're comfortable using that system, then start applying money to it, but only to a certain degree, because you have to have monetary discipline, right? There's a principle in trading where it's like you gotta you gotta manage your money well. And so it's like I always tell Owen, don't put more than 1 to 2% of your portfolio into one trade. You don't need to do any more than that. The market's not going anywhere. There's always going to be opportunity. You're not going to miss anything. Today might be a bunk day. Tomorrow might be a really great day, but you're not going to miss anything, and you don't need a full port. Getting rich in the stock market is, I know we see the stories of like so-and-so made 50 million bucks or whatever in 2 years, but it's like anything that's profitable in your life. Anything that you do that's profitable in your life typically takes time, right? It's a longevity game. It's you gaining knowledge. Knowledge becomes wisdom. You applying that wisdom, and you actively partaking in bringing in the knowledge inside of you. That's what makes you better. That's you know like I was saying, financial independence as a trader, in my opinion, comes from base it after base it after base it after base it after base it. It's the boring game, right? It's the $500 day, the $1,000 day, maybe the $2,000 day. And then every once in a while, everything lines up in the market and you get a $5,000 day or a $10,000 day. That's what I did. I clipped off when I was trading in the early 2000s. I clip off 5,000, 10,000, $15,000 a day. It was, like I'd say that was the average. But then I'd have those days where you'd make 40, 50, or even 100 grand or even 200 grand because everything lined up inside your system, and you're like, oh, okay, I can take advantage of that. I can exploit that.
Thank you so much. I think that's incredible advice. And I hope to, stay in contact with you and find out how Owen's doing over time, because it sounds like he's on track to do great things, and he's got a great mentor to help him and guide him.
I
So I'm really
appreciate that.
excited for that.
Yeah, we're excited for him. Everyone in the family is excited for him. He's got the mind to do it. He's mathematical like his daddy, and he's got the discipline, and he certainly has the confidence. And in this game, you need to have some confidence.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on too, Tape, is about, you retiring and taking some time off. And, I know that that was coming off the heels of a really good year. So can you talk a little bit about, your decision to step away from trading and the decision to eventually come back?
Right? Yeah, and then I came back. Right. Um, so I have 4 kids, And what you're talking about is in the year 2010, I retired at the age of 34 from the stock market. I had made a little over $16 million in my career, and we had just had our fourth child, and my kids were 6, 4, 2, and a baby. And I was working from 6:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night. Trade pre-market, trade the regular market, trade post-market because you have to make as much money as possible. And it was wearing thin on me. We had gained financial independence. My wife and I, we had a really great life. We had a great house. My wife was a stay-home mom from the day that she gave birth to my first child. So she always ran a really good home. And basically with me is I kind of hit like a midlife crisis at 34. And I had to really think about like life choices. Like, what do I want to do in life? What am I really trying to get out of life? Meaning, kind of like the purpose. Like, what's my purpose in life? What am I really trying to do? And I had to ask myself, am I really just trying to accumulate a lot of wealth? Because that's a trap, right? That's a trap that, especially in our job, the people fall into that trap a lot. Money can be very addictive, and so I was asking myself, like, am I willing to make another 20 million bucks? Am I willing to give myself to this game for, let's say, another 5 years, where I'm working 6, 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night? My kids never see me. My wife's taking them to the pool. We had a pool in the backyard. My wife's taking them to the pool. She's taking them to the park. She's taking them to the beach. And she's kind. Hey, Tim, come with us. Please come hang. Oh no, I got to stay home. I got to make some money. This is kind of, I'm building up why I made this decision. Okay. So I'm really like questioning myself, and I'm going, I mean, how much money does a man really need? And I think the conversation started from there with my wife. Like, hey, if we don't live a high society lifestyle. We don't really spend a lot of money. Our house is paid for, our cars are paid for. We spend money on vacations, things like that. If I never worked a day in my life ever again, would we be okay? And the answer was yes. And the freedom that came from that was, okay, now I get to actually do what I want to do, which is be the best dad I can possibly be for my kids. I want to be available for my kids. I want to make sure that I don't miss the parks and the beaches and the swimming pool and the playing ball in the front yard, or things like that. And so, you said I had a really good year in 2010. I had I always had like really good years. A million and a half, kind of average, right? But when the market imploded in 2008 from the whole housing crisis, I really, really cleaned up in 08, 09, and 2010 because my bias, I'm a naturally bear bias trader anyway. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I cut my teeth when the internet bubble popped, right? And I lost $1.5 million of my portfolio. So I'm always thinking like the next crash is going to happen. I never put myself in a position financially in the market where I'm thinking that, but in my brain has been triggered that way. So, um, 2008, when the housing market crashed, I I was prepared and I was ready. I was ready to go, and I exploited that to the downside and had a really great year. I mean, just an amazing year. '09 was even better, and then 2010, because this went on until late 2011 ish. Um, I had my best year I ever had, and so I was really felt like, how those professional athletes sometimes, like Tom Brady, for example, sometimes I wish I wish he would have retired on his last Super Bowl and stayed away. You know what I mean? He kind of ruined his legacy. That's the way I looked at it. Is like, if I had any trading legacy whatsoever, I went out on top. Like I dropped the mic. You know what I mean? And when I laid it down, I laid it down. I could I struggled for a little bit. I thought about it and dreamed about it, but I laid it down. The day I did my last trade, I turned my computer off. I thanked the Lord. I thanked the Lord that I could spend that time with my family. And I was grateful in my heart that I could move forward doing the things now that I wanted to do at such an early age of 34. But I struggled with it because trading courses through your blood. It just is part of you. It's part of your DNA. And so, how did I? Yeah, your other part of that question was, how did I get back into it? Because here I am, right? You see my computer. Um, so I did that. I had like 10, 11 really cool, amazing years where I literally spent every day with my family. But like all kids, they get bigger. Their priorities become a little different. You know, my 20-year-old doesn't want to hang out with me that much anymore. They don't need all that attention. They don't want all that attention. And so, I was like kind of getting bored. I had been doing houses. I forgot about that part. I'd been in real estate since 2003. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit, but I had been doing houses on the side while we traveled to other countries. I had crews around the area here. We were flipping houses. We were buying rental properties. So I was managing crews and doing stuff while I was having fun, which was fun. But at the same time, I was getting a little bored by it. And I had mentioned to my wife right after COVID started, everything's in lockdown. And I'm like, I'm getting kind of bored. She's like, yeah, I can see that. I mean, you can't go out to eat anywhere. You can't do anything. I was like, well, I've been thinking about maybe possibly getting back into trading since the kids don't need my attention like they used to. And of course, she's a great encourager, and she's like, okay, well, I think you should pray about it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll definitely pray about it. So I started praying about it, and I had a dream. I had like a really cool, what I consider to be God dream about it. And I felt like I got the okay to go back to trading. So I opened an account in August or September of 2021. Um, I opened it on a Friday. I put 30 or $35,000 into it. I can't remember how much it was, just to get it open, get over PDT and all that. I never had to worry about the PDT rule, but that's a new thing since I retired. So I did that, and then the next week I started trading, and I think that the next 5 days I doubled my account. And I've been not trading, for 10, 11 years, and it was the meme. It reminded me of the internet bubble because it's like was the meme craze and then the SPAC craze. And I thought, oh my God, this is like, it's not like 99 on steroids, but this is like that when all the fools are putting their money in and everything is going up. So I took advantage of it. I churned my account in a couple months to 550 grand. And I remember coming downstairs and just like declaring before my wife, like, the market is so much easier than it used to be. It's just not hard at all. Like I don't understand how anybody can make money in the stock market. And then the other thing too is like you don't have to pay for trades anymore. They're free. You don't have to pay for ECN fees unless you're on a direct access broker. I trade using Thinkorswim, so I just thought that was amazing because I used to spend 1 million to 2 million a year in ECN fees and TAP fees and NASDAQ fees. And like, I don't have to pay that anymore. Like, oh my God, I get to keep all that extra profit. And so I've been trading since August and August of 2020. Yeah. So what,
Uh,
5 years?
yeah, yeah, that's incredible. And there's a lot to unpack there. I,
We
I
could talk
think
a long time. We could talk
I,
for hours.
I love that. And we could talk about this for hours. I could easily chat with you and pick your brain for as many hours as you're willing to share because you've lived an incredible life,
I
you
agree.
know, trading outside of trading, which is the part I really wanted to focus on for a minute because there's a lot of guys that they get into trading, they stay in trading, and they're not able to really disconnect, family or otherwise, or they at least struggle with it. And it sounds like you found that reason and pushed yourself. and made it happen to step away. So one of the questions I have is like, for people who are thinking along those same lines, they've got kids, they've got a family, they want to be there more. What advice would you give them? What kind of pushed you over that hurdle, so to say, and actually get it done and do it and disconnect in ways that sometimes people are not able to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really great question. I talk to a lot of guys who identify with their work. I think that's a very, um, human thing to do, especially for men, is to identify with their work. So it's like, oh, hi, John. What do you do? And it's like the first question is like, what do you do? It's like for work. And I've never been that guy. I never identified myself first and foremost as a stock trader. I looked at it as an occupation that I was really, really good at and I got a lot of joy from. But at the same time, it was never my thing where like had made it an idol, let's say. And so I've always been a guy that's, been completely devoted to my wife. I believe that that's should always be my first priority. And so I've tried to, exclusively um, show that to my children, what that looks like. And then I also wanted to be an encouraging and available father, which I have shown my kids what that looks like as well. Um, I think most guys have a desire to do that as well, but then it's always like, well, what about the money? Because I'm a provider, I have to provide. What about the money? And I think for me, it has to go back to your rhythm. It has to go back to like what rhythm do you operate in? Because every human being operates in a different rhythm. Some people really, really thrive in a high pressure environment where other people crater in a high pressure environment. So this goes back to kind of like inner searching yourself and really trying to figure out how God made you to be as a human being. And so once you figure out what your rhythm is, you can figure out what your rhythm is inside your family. And then you just have to put guardrails and gates up when it comes to work. Like if you work for a boss who likes to call you on a Saturday or a Sunday, you just have to sit down and have a hard conversation and be like, hey, man, I want to devote myself to my family on the weekends because Monday through Friday, I'm devoted to you. And I'm going to give you everything I possibly can with excellence, but I have to give them more of me than I give more here. And, some guys might appreciate that and some guys might not. If they don't and they go, well, you can't work here anymore, my advice would be find a job where that is appreciated, where it is encouraged, where it is elevated inside of that culture. Because you get one shot at your marriage and you get one shot at your kids. I mean, how many people do we know? Just as an example, we can look, how many people do we know that have just boatloads of money, hundreds and hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. But what did they sacrifice at the altar to get there? They sacrificed 3 marriages. They sacrificed 4 relationships with their kids who now hate them and talk bad about them. And I never wanted to be that guy. Um, luckily for me, I had people around me that were older than me that were both financially successful and they have successful marriages and they have successful relationships with their kids. And they happen to be 15, 20 years older than me. And they said, hey, let's come have, dinner with me, come have coffee with me and let me give you some advice. And I wasn't too arrogant or prideful to not listen to them. I listened and I went, okay, that makes sense because I can see it in their life. And that is what I wanted for my family, and that's exactly what I ended up, achieving. You can talk all day long. Like I can talk all day long to my kids about what I think they should do. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to your children, there is more caught with their eyeballs by what they see you do than what you're teaching with your tongue. And so I've always tried to be a man of high integrity around my family. And if I'm telling my kids or my wife something, I want to live that out. I want to make sure that they understand that that's part of my being, part of my character, and part of my DNA. And I want them to take those same characteristics and do it with their families. I think a lot of times traders think success comes from having all kinds of financial wealth accumulation in the stock market. And I'm the first guy and probably the loudest guy in the room to tell you that if you want to be famous in your house. That's what matters. You don't need to be famous on Twitter. You don't need to be famous on YouTube. You want to be famous with your wife. Be famous with your daughter. Be famous with your son so that when they talk about you to other people, it's not a lie that they're elevating you. They're saying things like, my dad walks with high integrity and he expects excellence from us in all that we do. And the reason is that we're called to a place of excellence. And so they walk that out in their lives because they've seen it. That's why I continue to work hard today. I mean, I don't have to work. I choose to do what I want to do when I wake up in the morning. If I choose to go trade, I'll go trade. If I choose to go take my wife to lunch, I'll take my wife to her favorite French restaurant. If I choose to go, hang out with one of my daughters and take them on a date, or go hang out with my boys and go shoot guns or go hit golf balls or whatever, I get the opportunity to do that. And that is, in my eyes, the epitome and the utmost of success. And, it just so happens that I also have financial wealth. So I have that as well, but I don't elevate that above my family at all.
Yeah, that's incredible, and that's one of the things that I really, really, really like about your trading journey is your perspective and your grounded perspective in this way, and getting to hear you speaking with your wife about this. It's very clear that this is something that you guys have talked about and you guys have prioritized in your life is time together, time with your family, time with your community even. We haven't even talked about that component, but it's very clear that you do think about more than just the P&L. If anything, you're thinking about the P&L with your wife, the P&L that you get maybe have with your kids if they're, if there's this concept of having that type of relationship and thinking about how good that relationship is with them, not
Yeah,
just
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's a very good point. Like you're always creating profit or loss, whether it's monetarily in the market or if it's in a relationship. You're either building someone up or you're not. And so, like with my kids, there is a profit and loss. Like if I'm equitably encouraging my children on a daily basis, I'm building them up. I know some guys that talk to their kids like they're trash. Well, that's tearing them down. That's a lot. You do the same thing inside of your marriage, every single day. So
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I've talked to someone about this, and they brought up the point that a lot of traders are competitive with maybe even each other, and they'll compare their P&Ls, but they won't necessarily think about like what's this other guy's P&L with their wife. Are they so far in the green there? And the things that we choose, in other words, to be comparative with or to look at others, and so many times it's just the P&L. It's not the freedom or the happiness, the entire picture beyond just the bank account or the trading
mhm.
accounts or the daily P&L. But like you mentioned, that's an interesting way to
I
think
I
about it.
think I think that you can be successful and thriving in private, and not everybody needs to know. You know, I think that success to some degree can be hidden. I know we live in a social media society now, but I mean, let's just talk about like when you post P&Ls on Twitter, what happens? There's always a bigger fish. There's always someone making more money than you. It makes you feel inadequate. It makes you feel less than. It makes you feel like maybe you're not trading well enough, which could lead to over trading or it could lead to over leveraging. There's not really positives that come along with it. I have shared P&Ls on my Twitter, but I try to do it from a perspective of not like, hey, look at me, but it's, hey, if you are consistent, if you are a consistent, repeatable, profitable trader, then you too can have a lifestyle like this or even better. I wish more for you. I wish I want people to have a better lifestyle, a better marriage, a better relationship with their kids than I have. Um, But I think social media is just, it's a big trap. It's a whoa, look at me, I'm better than you sort of mentality. And we were talking about it the other day, chasing Lambos and Ferraris and Rolex watches. It's like whoever's got the shiniest, most glittery object wins. But what do you really win? What do you really win by losing? That's my point. It's like what see, you see that. You see the dude that makes a million, let's say. But what did he give up to get it? I would be interested in knowing that more so than how did he make it? Because he could be sacrificing a marriage. He could be sacrificing relationships with his kids
Exactly. Yeah. Or a potential marriage that doesn't
or a
pan
potential
out
marriage.
because,
Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. It's, yeah, it's definitely one that we could talk about for a long time. I think
The
there's a
double-edged
lot.
sword.
There's
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot there, and you know, related to that though, I wanted to just ask about the importance, and you mentioned some of this, but the importance of a support system and how important that is for a trader. Like you with your wife, your teammate, or elders in your community, or a trading group, someone that people that you could bounce ideas off. Can you talk a little bit about over your trading journey, the role and the importance that's had on you and your trajectory and success as a trader?
Yeah. So Anthony, I have all those. I mean, you hit them all. I have them all. I think to be a well-rounded individual, you need to have a piece of all of that. So let's just start with just being a husband, for example. Let's start at that level, right? I'm going to be a husband of 24 years. I'm with my girl for 31. I'm 40. I'm going to be 49 this year. I've never been married and been 55. I've never been married and been 60. I've never been married and been 65. So I keep guys around me that are of those ages that have thriving marriages, and I regularly talk to them. We regularly go on double dates with them, and we talk about marriage stuff. Hey, what does it look like when you became an empty nester and you just guys stared at each other all day long? Like, did you annoy one another? Was it really like, what's good about it? What's bad about it? That sort of stuff. Like, again, it's the accumulation of knowledge, right? I'm going 15, 20 years out into the future and I'm planting a flagpole on where I want my marriage to be. And I'm aiming my marriage in this direction with my wife. So you have the mentors. I believe that everybody should have at least one mentor. You should have a couple. I have a guy that I go to for business stuff. I also talk to him about marriage stuff. I have a guy that I have three guys that I go to for spiritual stuff. Like when I feel like I'm struggling there, I go talk to them about it. I have a friend that he doesn't have any kids, so I'm not going to ask him, tell me your opinion on children. He doesn't have any. Not that he probably couldn't answer, but he just doesn't have that knowledge. Likewise, I have friends that have 25-year-olds and 22-year-olds, and I've never had a 22-year-old before. I'm about to have one. So it's like, hey, tell me about your daughter when she turned 22. Was there anything going on that I should know about? That sort of thing. And that helped a lot when my kids, maybe not when they're 22, but that helped a lot when my kids were turning 13, 14, 15, 17, 12, because they got 12-year-old problems, they got 13-year-old problems. And at that time, I had never had a 13-year-old before. So I was seeing things I never seen. And I was like, either she's demon possessed and we need to throw her out the window, or I'm just parenting wrong. And it turns out I'm parenting wrong. We're parenting wrong. So we got better parent tips on how to guide our child the way that we thought it should go. So that, you should have mentors as a husband and as a father. Okay, that kind of encapsulated that. Likewise, I think that you should have a group for the career that we're in. I think that you should not trade solo. You shouldn't like sit at your desk and not talk to anybody. Um, I excuse me, I am a better trader because I am in a community that elevates the idea of gaining knowledge. So I feel constantly not pressured, but I feel constantly like um a desire to learn more. I mean, I could just go like this and go, I learned everything I want to learn. I don't want to learn anymore. But I want to be better and better and better and better. That's the excellence part that I've carried through my life. And so I'm in a community that elevates the knowledge so that I can then apply that and become a better trader. Plus, too, it helps Owen, right? It helps Owen. So you need to be in a group. I don't, I don't know. I'm not going to recommend groups. You need to be in a group that's doing that sort of thing, not, hey, stock ABCD is the greatest pump today. Let's all pump it. You don't need to be in a group like that. You need to be in a group that's like, hey, I saw that you did a bad trade. Can we analyze it and maybe we could figure out together where you can correct it so that the next time that doesn't happen and instead you get a positive result. That sort of thing is what I'm talking about. It's like iron sharpens iron, right? So it's like you need someone to rub you and kind of irritate a spot that you over leverage a lot. You need someone to constantly lean on you and going, you're over leveraging again, you're over leveraging again, so that you eventually get to a place where you become a disciplined, mentally disciplined trader. I mean, I think anybody would agree with that, but not a lot of people do it. It sounds good and everyone will go, yeah, that's great advice, Tape. But a lot of people don't do it. They don't put the time and effort into it. So you have that. And then the other thing too is like, I firmly believe personally that everyone has something to offer to somebody else. And so like you should be mentoring someone. I'm mentoring. I mentor. I have 3 guys right now. I'm mentoring young 20-something-year-old men. But I believe that it just makes you a better human being, and it brings about more joy and gratitude in your life when you can do that. Now, I don't know what you want to mentor someone in. For me, I spend a lot of time talking to young men that are recently married and or recently had a baby, and you've done both those things, and both those things are shocking, and we have misplaced conceptions about what marriage should look like or what having a baby might look like. And I think they kind of get the deer in the headlight look and they may not know how to react properly. And so my job in that is to come alongside them and say, hey man, hold their hand a little bit. It's going to be okay. I'm going to give you some advice. I hope you listen. I'm not going to overwhelm them one baby step at a time. But I think anybody could do that. Like a 21-year-old can mentor that might have had a bad past, let's say, drug addiction or something like that. They conquered drug addiction. They can be mentoring a 16-year-old that might possibly have a tendency to want to do that. So you kind of hit the nail on the head when you defined all those things because you need those in order to make yourself a well-rounded human being individual or to make yourself an elevated husband or an elevated father or an elevated friend. You should be a faithful friend. You should be a good friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that, especially because, in trading, it's so easy to just think about the charts or the technicals, what's moving for 12 or more hours a day. And before you know it, it's time to just sleep if you can and do it all over again the next day and not think about some of these larger kind of perspectives and things that at some point, you look down and the calendar years passed and you're writing a trade review and then it's year after year after year. So I really appreciate you, Tape, for taking the time to talk about some of these things that they go definitely hand in hand with trading, like keeping an open mind, constantly be learning, reach out to others, building a network,
Well,
being
I just
surrounded.
I just
So
want to say those things make you a better trader. You know, not just sitting in front of your computer studying, studying, studying. Those other things make you a well-rounded trader. They have an inherent advantage for your career. The support network, for example, you talked about like my wife. She's my best ally. She's my wife. I know she loves me. She's always been my greatest cheerleader. She's never discouraged me, even when I had my, $585,000 blow up in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was. And I told her she didn't browbeat me or talk harshly to me. That would have been a great opportunity for her to do it. Oh, you just lost 600K. She just kind of like took like a gulp of air and just asked me if I wanted hamburgers for dinner. But even afterwards, she said, you know, you're gonna get it all back. She didn't say you're gonna get it all back. She said you're gonna do just fine. You're going to have a great week next week. Or I think that was like a Thursday or Friday when that happened. And she was right. I came back the following week and I had a $1.4 million week. So
Yeah.
it's you need to have a cheerleader. You know, you need to have a team around you. So when you do screw up, you're not the one picking yourself up all the time. Sometimes you need a friend or two to help you pick yourself up and dust yourself off. I mean, I understand the work hard, you know, do it yourself sort of mentality that Americans have, but and I have that in me too. Don't get me wrong. Like, but it's much easier when you have some people around you that are encouraging you, going, okay, it's going to be okay. We know you took a big hit, but we're going to be here for you. You can talk to us about it. We understand. You know, you got to get it out of your system when you take a big hit. You got to talk about it. You got to kind of work. There's like a trauma level attached to it. There's 3 or 4 steps attached to it. It might take 6 months or a year to get over, but you need people to help you do that, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, she's a good teammate, and my kids too. My kids encourage me all the time. They'll see me come up in the morning with a cup of coffee, and I'll be 2 or 3 hours into my day, and they'll be like, "You're gonna do great today, Dad." And I do. You know, I didn't tell you this the other day, but I do share my P&Ls with the family. We have a family chat, and so throughout the day, I'll take a little screenshot and then I'll put it in the family chat, and my kids will like attach hearts to it or thumbs up or man, Dad, you're killing it today. You're doing awesome. And it just helps me. It really it helps me kind of pass the boringness of the day and it gives me inspiration to continue doing a job that I do love, but is kind of coming to its end, let's say.
That's incredible. And shout out to all of the, trader wives out there and significant others and
Right.
the support systems for that, because it's, when you're up, it's great. When you're down, they're there with you. They go through that with you, and to have someone, that a support system like that is just incredible. And I wish for everybody to have that as well.
I do as well. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit, Tape, about, what's next for you. What do the next few years look like for you?
You know, that is a question that I've been pondering for the last year. So you're like, you can help ponder it with me, Anthony. um, so I've I've had the benefit of having a successful trading career the first time around. You know, I've had a successful trading career the second time around. I think it's even more, it means more because I'm teaching my son. In addition to that, I've also built a real estate business that I've had extreme success in as well. So, um, and I'm going to be 49. So next year I'm going to be 50. I'm hitting that kind of the age where you just really start thinking about the next season of your life. Also, too, my kids are getting to the ages where they're adults and they're gone all day and they're thinking about getting their own places and buying their own houses. And I'm going to be an empty nester soon. And so, again, we're kind of back in that same situation in 2010 where my wife and I are starting to have conversations about how do we want to spend our last 30, 35, 40 years, God willing, if he wants to give us those years. And so we've thrown around some ideas. We love to travel. You know, we're a traveling family. We love to travel. My wife and I, we try to go twice a year to for a month at a time, just her and I, just as like a reconnect sort of, or not reconnect, but a staying connected sort of thing. And so we know we want to travel. We've kicked around the idea of taking a few $1 million and buying kind of like townhouse condos in 5, 6 areas of the world that we really, really love, and kind of live in this lifestyle where we spend a month in one place and then we hop to another place. And then while they're empty, my business mind, you know, is like, well, we'll Airbnb it and VRBO it. It'll be an investment, obviously, but it'll help us accomplish our goals of traveling And at the same time, because we're going from property to property that we own, everything that we do is a tax write-off, which is also important. So we can live a very like a tax-free lifestyle, right? And get to do what we want to do. Um, and follow me for more tax advice. Um, but then too, we're also thinking like we really love Ecuador. Ecuador is very special to us. We started going there as a family in 2015. We try to go back at least once a year, if not twice a year. There's something about Ecuador that has my heart, has my family's heart. So we're talking about possibly one of the places being a beach house on in a place called Manta, which is on the Pacific side of Ecuador. I think that if we do that, we would probably go there during the cold months that we have here in Kansas City, and then come back here when spring's popping so I can see all my beautiful flowers and plants and stuff and gardens that I like to do outside. So, we're talking about that. But then we also threw around the idea of buying 100 acres of private beachfront down in Manta, building a nice home for my wife and I, and 6 to 7 little casitas, and opening up an orphanage for like 150 or 200 kids, and kind of living out our life like that. I've always wanted to have my own private beach. So I'm trying to finagle kind of the things that I want, also with like having what I would call a profitable rest of my life where I'm giving back to humanity and I'm serving the people that the Lord loves. So there's a lot of discussions happening. I tell you what, you won't see is 2 years from now, you won't see Tapereader on Twitter. You won't see Tapereader and Tenant. I won't be actively trading. I will be done. I think as soon as I'm done with teaching Owen everything that I know, and I see that he is 100% sufficient and or even better than me, then I know that my last final job as a stock trader is done, and I can kind of drop the mic again and go, okay, well, we're gonna put this down. It's never gonna get picked up again. So, and with that being said, I talked about, oh, and I have another son, Ethan, and Ethan is taking over all of our rental properties. So my wife and I, we have 34 rental properties around Kansas City, and he's decided, he got a degree in general construction management, and he's decided that he wants to take over the rental properties, and he wants to expand it. And so where I've actually gone in and bought property that was older and then renovated it, he doesn't want to do that, nor do I want him to do that because that's a lot of work. We're just buying land, which I've recently bought him 7 duplex zone lots, and we're going to build our own properties. So he's going to take his company and kind of, go in that direction. And I can totally see him becoming like building out a whole neighborhood, like us building neighborhoods and stuff like that. So yeah, he's thriving too, and I'm proud of all my kids.
That's incredible. I love to hear it, and a little bit bittersweet to hear that you're planning to step away. But when I think about what you're going to be doing and all the good that you're going to be doing and living your best life, and really, you know, getting to enjoy all of the hard work you've done, trading and definitely the benefits of trading, it makes me happy all at the same time, and
I
grateful that we
appreciate
got
that.
to do this episode, and let everybody out there, the audience, hear your perspective, your trading journey as well. So I'm definitely going to be in touch with you, and wherever you go, maybe we'll get to do a follow up.
Yeah, I think, I talked to you about, I'm going to be doing a podcast later on called Talking with Tape. And my podcast is basically going to be devoted to kind of what I'm talking about. It's going to be more of a mentoring sort of role as opposed to, I think you should do these trades so you can make money. I'm holistically trying to figure out how do we build up a better community of traders from a mental health perspective, and how do we give them things that have longevity attached, um, to their lives, that actually have meaning. um, so how many people do we know that have garnered huge amounts of wealth and they're the saddest people in the world? They're the richest and the brokest at the same time.
Great point. Great point. Way too many.
a
And
lot.
I love this idea of a holistic approach to your
Yeah,
trading or to your success, in general. So,
yeah.
and, and Tate, if it's okay with you, I would love to finish this episode with sort of a lightning round set of questions, if that's okay. Pretty quick questions, pretty
Yeah,
quick
let's go.
answers.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Ask
Well,
away.
the first question is, what would you consider to be your greatest strength as a trader?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say my perseverance. I've always been a person who, when I attacked like something in my life, I wanted to do it really, really well. So I have this confidence. I walk with this confidence. It's not arrogance. I walk with this confidence and going, well, that doesn't look too hard. I can conquer that. Whereas some people might look at it and go, I don't know, I'm scared, I can't do it, and they don't ever get past the talking about it phase. I like to feel like I'm a guy of action because of my perseverance.
What has been the most memorable stock that you've traded throughout your career?
Well, I mean that's easy. So I used to trade a stock called Lucent, LU. It doesn't exist anymore, but I traded that stock every day for like 2.5, 3 years, and it would trade 100 to 125, 150 million shares on average a day. And I would sometimes trade 25% of its daily volume. So I was trading, 25, 35 million shares a day in my pajamas in my office. Um, some days it was less, 10 or whatever. But yeah, I used Lucent as my, I would say, stock market ATM machine. And I basically just acted like a liquidity, like a market maker. Yeah, it's a funny, I have a funny, like, anecdotal story if you just humor me for a minute. So I got this phone call, I'm trading Lucent, the day's over, and I get this phone call from a friend of mine. His name's Jeff Martinez. He used to work at a company called Order Execution Services in Chicago. And he calls me and he's like, Tim, hey Jeff, what's going on? He said, I just got a call from the Lucent specialist at the post of the New York Stock Exchange, and he's sick and tired of you, but he wants to meet you. And so I was like, okay, I'll go meet him. So I was like, maybe a couple weeks later, I'm on the floor of the stock exchange. It was a very active day. And it was like in the middle of the day. So Jeff was with me. He wanted to kind of hear how this went down. And so we went over to meet him and I introduced myself. He introduced himself back and he goes, the Lucent guy. That's what he said to me. He goes, you're my nemesis. And I said, explain that. Why am I your nemesis? And he basically was like, you know, I have a hard time filling my big orders because you suck up all the volume. And he wasn't incorrect. I mean, I don't want to get into everything that I did, but I had liquidity on all the routes. Let's put it that way in the book. If it was a route that was in the book, I had liquidity on it on both the buy and sell side. And he did have a hard time, um, getting his bigger orders filled. And so he playfully called me his nemesis, but he understood it's the same thing he was trying to do. I was just quicker because he had that little handheld machine and I had my little X keys, that I could hit. He didn't have pre-programmed keys like that. So I was just slightly faster than him. Obviously, you can't do stuff like that anymore. You got co-located machines right next to the exchanges and algos are way faster. But back in the day of the manual trading, yeah, Lucent was my guy. And Lucent was my best trade, my best profit ever was the day Lucent got kicked out of the S&P 500, maybe. I can't remember exactly what I got kicked out of, but it had I knew it was going to get kicked out. I obviously that stuff's telegraphed, right? But being a mock trader, I was short going into the print 2.5 or 3 million shares and the mock came out on it and it was 127 million shares to sell, which was absolutely humongous. And granted, Lucent was a very fixed stock, meaning you could have, with all the liquidity on the buys and sells, you could have 3.5, 4 million shares of liquidity at each price point, you know? Um, but when he printed it, so he had to do a manual print on it. He printed it at like 4:35. He printed it 35 minutes after the close because it was so many dang shares. And the crazy part was, is I had my market on close buy orders sitting staggered down in the book. Like, it was like 100K at a time, like leveled down. I don't remember the prices, but 221, 220, 219, 218, and had a couple of them at each level, you know, 5 or 6 or 7. And when the print went off, I also had extra buy. I had another 3 million in buy orders out there. So I had a total of like 5.5, 6 million buy orders of the mock, and he printed it like 17 or 18 cents below where it closed. And so, like, I saw my P&L. I was already up a couple 100K that day, but I saw my P&L very quickly go to like 800 and some thousand when he printed it. And then I looked over and I was like, oh, and now I'm long 2.5, 3 million shares in the book. The book, so he printed it down, but the book was still 17 cents higher. So I just started whacking the bid. And
Yeah.
yeah, I made 1.4 million that week.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's a
crazy.
pretty memorable
That's great. We celebrated. I think the family went out for like really good steaks and stuff. We celebrated that. Another good, let's see, another memorable trade. A lot of my memorable trades are mock. They're market on close because I could do a lot of sides because I knew the book. I knew about where the book would print, so I took a little bit more risk associated with those trades. Plus, I was doing marked buy and sell mock orders, so I knew they had to print. So there wasn't any chance of me getting stuck. I knew that he had to print them, you know. But yeah, I've had a handful of um I can't even remember what they were, but I've had probably a dozen 250,000 dollar days. I've had a few $500,000 days. Um I've had probably 3 or 4 million dollar months over my career. But it all goes hand in hand, right? So like I also have big losses, like I mentioned one earlier with the QQQs. Um, it was the day that the earthquake happened in Fukushima and the tsunami came in and hit the reactor and stuff. I on my real tick, I usually had really good news because it was like Bloomberg and stuff. But for whatever reason, I got it like 25 seconds too late, and I was taking a long position. I don't remember how many shares I had, but as it started to crater. And as it started to crater, I was like, well, what's the news? And I just thought it was like an algo that messed up. So, bought more. Then it went lower. I was like, well, this algo's freaking out. This guy's going to get hosed, right? So I'm buying more and buying more. And by the time the news came across, I realized what I had done. And I just started unloading it. And I took almost a $600,000 hit in about 5 minutes. In hindsight, obviously, I mean, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? 9 times out of 10, that was a bad algo that someone turned on. Back then, people were testing algos and they did all kinds of weird stuff. And it would have turned out to be a great trade, but I just got my news a little too late, and so yeah, I got monkey hammered on that one. But it is what it is. But I guess I mean just say it. My greatest success is the day in and day out base hit after base hit after base hit. And I think I've said this before, maybe on Twitter, but I've said it in Tenet. I had 217 days in a row where I made money. That's
That's
unreal. Like that's hard to do. Like that's what you call like real big time consistency. That's when you know you have a good system, when you can perform like that. Now, granted, inside there they were $5,000, $10,000 days, but I'm more proud of that than anything because my P&L doesn't look like somebody's P&L that they put it on Twitter where it's like they take 10,000 to 3 million, run it back down to 50K, and now they're back up to a million. I think that that's lunacy. to be honest. That's obviously gambling. I like a good P&L that kind of, looks like that. I would be more apt to tell someone good job when if they told me that, if they showed me that.
Is there any part of your trading even now that you're working to improve on, or do you feel really confident with it as it is?
No, I'm always trying to improve my trading. It's definitely more difficult these days because my desire is less. It's becoming less. I feel it, you know, kind of removing itself from me. I don't know how that works, but I just have less and less of a desire to really sit up here all day long. So typically, I trade the first hour of the day. I make my money on SPX. I trade SPX zero T DTEs using the EMA clouds now is pretty much what I do. About 70% of my trading, and so I'll trade the first hour because the action obviously is there, and then I trade the last usually hours. I try to be here in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. I don't like to sit up here during the middle of the day. There's too many fun things to go do and cool people to hang out with, and people that I care about way more than making another buck to go spend time with. So yeah, but I am actively trying to become better at more of what I call the MTF style trading that goes along with the EMA clouds. Trying to actually write a program right now where TradingView will alert me on qualifying air gaps of like whatever I program. I find that to be kind of exhilarating because TradingView can give me the alerts, and then once we have the alert, then we can pop open the chart to see if it's actually true. And if we look at it and we get a good consistent alert mechanism out of TradingView, I think the next thing is that we automate it. And so Owen will just basically sit in front of a computer and make sure it doesn't go crazy and let the computer do what we're doing manually.
Last question. If you could give one piece of advice to all new traders, every person that begins this trading journey can hear this, what would you tell them?
Before you focus on making money, focus on the process of becoming consistent inside of a system, of knowing uh, inside your system, of knowing what you think the stock is going to do. So take 6 months of your life, kind of like what I did with watching data, but use a system, find a successful system. There are some out there that a lot of people use, thousands of traders use. I'm not the only guy in the world that uses the EMA clouds. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that uses the EMA clouds. They work, right? I think inside that system, inherently, there has to be some characteristics and qualifiers that need to be put in place. And then obviously, if you have a little bit of knowledge, you have an advantage inside that system as well. But it starts with getting a system and not worrying about making money. I think traders with the idea that they have to become rich quick is a lie, and they need to recognize it as a lie that most of the time wealth accumulation in the stock market happens on a day-to-day basis. It's like the Warren Buffett, right? It's the Warren Buffett effect. Of course, you're going to have those outliers, and those outliers are always going to be posting stuff on Twitter. You're always going to see it. But I guarantee you that is not a majority of the people. And they're always going to show you the greatest of what they did. They're never going to show you the low of what they did. They're never going to show you the losses. They're only going to show you the best of the best. So you got to call it what it is, and a lot of it is fake. And so you don't find yourself daydreaming about that. If you really want a career as a trader, as a matter of fact, I met a guy just the other day, a guy here in Kansas City hit me up on Twitter and asked if we could get together and talk about trading. Young 23-year-old man. And I told him the same exact thing. I said, tell me your story. How'd you get started? And he's like, well, I put $30,000 in an account and started trading options. If I had a dollar every time I heard that, I would have another $1 million. Um, and I said to him, I said, if you really want my advice, this is what I would do. And this is exactly what I've done with my son, Owen. And so if I'm teaching one of the most precious things in my life, my son, Owen, if I'm teaching him that, then you should listen. And he goes, okay, I'm going to listen. So that would be my advice.
Well, Tape, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your trading journey and your wisdom. I really, really, really appreciate you, and thank you for coming on. And I know the audience will have plenty to listen to, probably repeat listens if they want to take it all in. Thank you so much, Tape. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for having me. You're a great host, and I appreciate you just giving me time to even share a portion of my life story, to include the trading part. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. I'm very grateful.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Trader's Journey. We have additional episodes we believe you might also like, so don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified of upcoming releases the moment they're available. Thanks for tuning in.